4th Kent State shootings were the product of days of unrest on the Kent State campus. On May 1, 1970, students came out to protest the bombings in Cambodia, which broadened the war, and to protest the military draft for a war they did not support. The students began to be disruptive. There was vandalism, people threw rocks and bottles at the police, and others looted stores. The mayor at the time, Leroy Sachem, declared a state of emergency and called in the Ohio National Guard. On May 4, 1970, after the students had resumed classes, a rally was called for noon. National Guardsmen eventually had to fire tear gas into the crowd. The crowd became hostile and began to throw things at the Guardsmen. The Guardsmen advanced on the crowd, and for a reason that nobody has ever proven, fired into the crowd. 4 students were killed: Allison Krause, William Schroeder, Jeffrey Miller, and Sandra Schuer, 2 of whom were not even involved in the protests. 9 others were wounded. The Kent State shootings were an integral piece of the Vietnam War because they demonstrated the opposition of young people to the war, especially to the draft, and galvanized others to protest against the war. The Kent State shootings also brought the war home to people, making it real in a deeply personal and emotional way. Students were protesting Nixon's decision to order U.S. troops to invade Cambodia on May 1st in 1970. He ordered the troops to penetrate approximately 21 miles and stay approximately 60 days. Students were against the United States being involved in the war. They were protesting to have their voices heard. The protests made Nixon look bad, since he stated while being elected that he would try to end the war without getting the U.S. involved directly. The Kent State shootings symbolized the day that the Vietnam War came to the United States. Nixon was forced to send Ohio National Guard to this area to control the outbreaks and protests. It was believed by some that the troops were being wasted when they could have been fighting over there instead of fighting civilians here. This particular outbreak was very violent due to the fact that the Ohio National Guard felt their lives were in danger around the crowd. This was their justification for shooting the crowd and killing numerous people. Kent State shootings got the world's attention. The public was enraged over how the Ohio National Guard responded to the protests. 2 of the 4 students who were shot and killed were simply walking from class to class and were not involved in the protests whatsoever. Many innocent lives were affected during these shootings. The protests were simply a way to have each individual student's voice heard. The poignant picture of Mary Vecchio kneeling in agony over Jeffrey Miller's body is a symbol of how angry and upset people were over these shootings. After the tragedy of Kent State, the nation was in shock that a travesty happened in America. Students and many civilians marched to demonstrate at Washington. It not only tarnished the public image of Nixon, but of the National Guard as well. The National Guard set up a new system of crowd control, and these methods are still used today. In fact, they were used during the LA riots and Hurricane Katrina aftermath. The shootings launched not only entertainment forms, but soon became synonymous with the injustice and anger associated with the war. The shootings at Kent State will never be forgotten. This was the turning point in American history, when the civilian population of the United States began to distrust the government. This occurrence also reignited the urge to end the war in Vietnam, but the shootings will most likely be remembered for their tremendous cruelty and lack of compassion towards other members of the human race. Although it left many broken, it let the people of the United States' voices be heard and got the U.S. involved to help end this awful war.